Thank you, colleagues. The next item of business is consideration of business motion 24040 in the name of Graham Day on behalf of the Bureau setting out a business programme. Could I call on Graham Day to move this motion?
Move, Presiding Officer.
Thank you very much. And no member has indicated the wish to speak on the motion. The question therefore is that motion 24040 be agreed. Are we agreed? Yes. We are agreed. Thank you. The next item is consideration of business motions 24041 and 24042 on the stage 1 timetable for two bills. Could I call on Graham Day to move these motions?
Move, Presiding Officer.
Thank you. And again, no one has indicated the wish to speak on these motions. The question is that motions 24041 and 24042 be agreed. Are we agreed? Yes. Thank you very much. The next item is consideration of Parliamentary Bureau motion 24043 on approval of an SSI. Again, could I call on Graham Day to move this motion?
Move, Presiding Officer.
Thank you very much. Now, I believe Michelle Ballantyne would like to speak against this motion. So I'm going to call Michelle Ballantyne.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. It doesn't give me any pleasure to take up the Chamber's time to speak to this SSI, but I feel it is important to raise how unsatisfactory it is that SSIs are presented to this Parliament with a broad range of elements that we either have to support or reject en masse. I have raised this at DPLR committee and hope that in the next session of Parliament, the manner in which SSIs are presented can be reviewed. However, this afternoon, we are being asked to support 7 different restrictions and requirements within this one SSI, whose only connection is that the Scottish Government considers them important to suppressing the COVID virus. However, I am struggling to find the evidence to support some of these. For example, what happens to landlords who are not receiving rents and cannot take action? Do they lose their properties if they cannot pay the mortgages? And if the properties are then sold on, what happens to the tenants? Do parents who can by court order only see their children at a contact centre lose the right to see their children during this difficult time? And how does, as I have experienced, a number of people waiting and chatting outside a takeaway door aid the management of COVID when they can stand inside a queue at a supermarket? And finally, why is it necessary to have a prohibition on the consumption of alcohol in a public place in a level 4 area when the regulations require you to stay at home without a reasonable excuse, and many areas already have bylaws governing this issue? I am reserving my position until I hear if the Minister can give rational, evidence-based explanations for these regulations and explain how the risks they pose will be mitigated. I do wonder, however, if my fellow MSPs can really be fully conversant with the content of what they are voting on, and as lockdown continues, the risk that some of these regulations pose when the bundling of the regulations are so disconnected. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms Ballantyne. And could I call on the Cabinet Secretary, Michael Russell, to respond on this point?
Thank you, Presiding Officer. These regulations tighten aspects of the lockdown restrictions in a number of ways to help bring the virus under control. And I stress that, to help bring the virus under control. They adjust restrictions surrounding click and collect services. They prohibit the consumption of alcohol in outdoor public places. They do not allow customers to physically enter food takeaway outlets. These regulations tighten the existing stay-at-home requirement to ensure non-essential activities are not undertaken when leaving the home, and restrict to essential work only, work in other people's homes in level 4 areas. These regulations also require the closure of child contact centres, with the exception of child contact centres provided by local authorities. These regulations also provide for a number of positive changes. They prohibit evictions from taking place in level 3 or 4 areas to ensure renters are protected and don't have to form new temporary households with friends and family at this time. They also allow premises which are required to be closed to reopen if it is for the purpose of providing a venue for vaccination. Now, I understand that the member does not agree with lockdown being imposed, but lockdown is in place in all 4 nations. It is supported by all clinicians advising government, and indeed the medical community as a whole, and not just in the 4 nations, but internationally too. No matter what Ms Ballantyne's new party believes, including support for the Great Barrington Declaration, which the WHO called dangerous, unethical and lacking a sound scientific basis, all of these measures are necessary for limiting social contact and bringing this new strain of the virus under control, preventing our health service from being overwhelmed, and ultimately reducing infections to the level where we consider lifting these restrictions. As the First Minister has set out in her regular updates to Parliament, there are some encouraging signs that these measures are beginning to have an effect in Scotland. I would like that to continue and not be derailed by the way that Ms Ballantyne is suggesting. We know it can take a number of weeks for the measures to feed through into the numbers of cases and the numbers of people in hospital. We need to stay the course and see this through, not throw away the hard-won progress we are making by relaxing restrictions too quickly, or doing it for ideological reasons. And for these reasons, I would invite Parliament not to support the motion today.
Thank you very much, Cabinet Secretary. And the vote on this matter will be taken at decision time shortly. But at the moment, we'll move on to the next item of business, which is consideration of Parliamentary Bureau Motion 24053 on approval of an SSI. And again, could I call on Graham Day to move this motion?
Moved, Presiding Officer.
Thank you very much. Now, this is the Provision of Early Learning and Childcare Specified Children Scotland Amendment Order. I've had notification from two members who would wish to speak on this motion, Beatrice Wishart and Jamie Green. I can actually only take one, so I'm going to apologise to Jamie Green, but I had advance notice from Beatrice Wishart first. But it is noted that Jamie Green wished to speak on this in the first place. Beatrice Wishart.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I've supported the move to a legal right to funded deferrals throughout the Give Them Time campaign, but I have grave concerns about what the Government has brought forward today. Those working on the campaign were left disappointed by the proposals set out in this SSI. It says that there's a full right to deferral and it will not exist across Scotland until 2023. The 5 local authority areas where full funding will now be piloted were already accepting 100% of application. This year, children have missed out on so much because of the virus. Some will barely remember socialising with anyone outside their bubble, and we know how critical the early years are to life chances and attainment. And so more families than ever before will now be wondering if their 4-year-old is ready to start school this August. These children will be turning up to school for the first time, having missed out on 18 months of normal play. Playgroups and social events have not been an option, and nurseries have been stop-start. The plan for 2023 fails to recognise how difficult the next group of school starts may find the adjustment. The Scottish Government speak about getting it right for every child, and yet this August there will be a £4,500 price tag hanging over families who want to give their children more time. The Education Committee took evidence from the Minister, but I've yet to hear a convincing justification for why 2023 is the best that we can do. Why should deferral not be available to every family that thinks that is right for them? Parents should be given the legal right to both defer Primary 1 and have it replaced with funded early learning and childcare. Parents should not be allowed to concentrate solely on what is Parents should be allowed to concentrate solely on what is best for the child, not the family's financial situation. This should be an important part of education system's response to the pandemic and the plan to help children catch up. Children only start school once. The Government could remove the extra financial barrier, guarantee full funding for all parents who need it, and empower families to do what they feel is right. On that basis, Scottish Liberal Democrats cannot support these regulations today.
Thank you very much, Ms Wishart. And I'm going to call on the Minister, Marie Todd, to respond on behalf of the Government.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I'm delighted that we've laid legislation on deferral to ensure children deferring their Primary 1 place can benefit from high-quality funded early learning and childcare. I'm pleased that we have also now legislated to reintroduce the statutory duty to deliver 1140 hours by August 2021. But we must be mindful that delivery in parallel with our deferral commitment requires a balanced approach, particularly with the continued backdrop of the challenges imposed by the COVID-19 response. It's essential that the introduction of this SSI doesn't put the successful delivery of the early learning and childcare expansion, for which the Scottish Parliament has demonstrated its strong support, at risk. It's important to note that this deferral policy has the potential to have a significant impact on the number of children attending ELC. Around 20,000 children will become newly eligible for funded ELC as a result of this SSI, but it's difficult to predict the likely uptake. We don't know the impact that this change will have on parental behaviour in terms of changing demand for deferred places. Local authorities have planned carefully for the 1140 expansion and are working to full capacity to ensure sufficient places will be available across the public, private and third sectors in August. To add the additional pressure of the deferral obligation during the final stages of preparation would introduce an unacceptable and unnecessary level of risk to successful delivery of the expansion. We must therefore gather robust evidence to help us better understand likely changes in the uptake of the entitlement ahead of full rollout. That's why we announced £3 million in December to support 5 local authorities pilot implementation in 21-22, and we intend to extend this to further authorities during 22-23. We'll learn from all of those pilots, including those who have previously funded most or all requests for discretionary deferrals. We will, for example, learn more about behaviour change in terms of parental demand if there isn't an application process. I am acutely aware that this year has been a difficult one for children and that it will continue to be for many families. I have said before, and I'll say it again, it is really important that we do not think of children as being school ready, but of schools as being child ready. Most children will be eager to start school as normal in August, and I know that schools and ELC settings will be carefully considering the needs of this cohort as they plan the transition. Ahead of full implementation, I expect local authorities to continue to use their discretion on funded deferrals with the interest of the child at the heart of those decisions, whether due to the impact of COVID-19 or otherwise. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. And again, the question on this motion will be put at decision time, to which we will come shortly. The next item of business is consideration of 11 parliamentary bureau motions. Could I call on Graham Day to move and speak to motions 24044 to 24051 on approval of SSIs, and to move motions 24052 and 24054 on approval of SSIs?
I'll move all of those, Presiding Officer, and speak to the two I think that are relevant. One of those prohibits evictions taking place in level 3 or 4 areas. It allows premises required to be closed to the public to open for the purposes of vaccination venues and required child contact centres to close. It imposes a prohibition on a person consuming alcohol in a public place outdoors in a level 4 area. It prevents customers entering takeaway outlets in level 4 areas, and it restricts the ability to carry out work or services for the upkeep maintenance of homes to essential work only in level 4 areas. Those regs came into force on the 16th of January. The other one moves the Isle of Barra and the Isle of Battersea to level 4 lockdown restrictions, and that one came into force on the 20th of January.
Thank you very much, Minister. And the sharp-eyed will have noticed it's 10 SSIs, not 11. But thank you very much for that. So we now turn to decision time. Before we come to the first question, I just remind members that if the amendment in the name of Shirley-Ann Somerville is agreed, then the amendment in the name of Rachel Hamilton and of Polly McNeill will fall. So the first question is that amendment 24029.2 in the name of Shirley-Ann Somerville, which seeks to amend motion 24029 in the name of Mark Ruskell on universal support for self-isolation be agreed. Are we agreed? Yes. Or not agreed? We're going to move to a vote. Therefore, I'm going to suspend for a few moments to allow members both in the chamber and externally to access the voting app. Parliament is suspended for a few moments. Thank you, colleagues. We're now back in session and we will move to the vote. Just to remind members that the government amendment preempts the Conservative and Labour amendments. So the question is that Amendment 24029.2 in the name of Shirley-Ann Somerville, which seeks to amend motion 24029 in the name of Mark Ruskell on universal support for self-isolation be agreed. Members may cast their votes now. It's a 1-minute division. 1 minute on Shirley-Ann Somerville's amendment. That vote is now closed. If any member had any difficulty in voting, please let me know. Can I call David Stewart to make a point of order? David Stewart.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I was unable to connect to the digital platform. I would have voted no.
Thank you, Mr Stewart. You would have voted no to the government amendment. That will be added to the register. Thank you very much. Point of order, Shirley-Ann Somerville. Thank you, Ms Somerville. I can assure you your vote was registered. Point of order, Rona Mackay. So we'll just switch the microphone on, Ms Mackay, or put it up, or... If it saves you, Ms Mackay, I can tell you you have voted and it has been registered.
Okay.
And in fact, I can tell every member in the chamber that their vote has been registered. And online, I can tell Mr Macpherson his vote was registered. And Angela Constance. And Mr Swinney, your vote was counted. And Shona Robertson. In fact, I can tell every member's vote has been registered. Thank you. Thank you, colleagues. The result of the vote on amendment number 24029.2 in the name of Shirley-Ann Somerville is yes 66, no 59. There were no abstentions. The amendment is therefore agreed. The next question is therefore that the motion 24029 in the name of Mark Ruskell as amended on universal support for self-isolation be agreed. Are we all agreed? We're not agreed. We'll move to a vote. Members may cast their votes now, and this will be a 1 minute division on the amended motion. A 1 minute division.
I just love to wind him up. He called me a wrong name one time. I've never let him forget it. Told you what? And more than once.
Thank you, colleagues. That vote is now closed. I believe a number of members may have had difficulty registering their vote there. If they think they weren't able to register their vote, please let me know through a point of order. That vote is closed. I've got a number of points of order. The first from David Stewart. David Stewart, point of order.
Thank you, President. I'm afraid I also had difficulties again, and I would...
Sorry, Mr. Stewart, I didn't quite catch that. Just repeat that, please.
Sorry. I'm sorry, I had difficulties again logging in, and I would have voted no.
You would have voted no. Thank you very much, Mr. Stewart. That will be noted and added to the register. Point of order for Angela Constance.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Just to advise that despite refreshing the app on my phone, I wasn't actually given the opportunity to vote, and I would have voted yes.
Thank you very much, Ms Constance. You'd have voted yes. I'll make sure that is noted and added to the register. Point of order, Shona Robertson.
Yep, thank you. I wasn't able to vote either. I would have voted yes.
Thank you very much, Ms Robertson. You would have voted yes. I'll make sure that is also added to the register. Point of order, John Swinney.
Presiding Officer, like my colleagues, I was unable to refresh the app and I would have voted yes.
Thank you, Mr Swinney. You would have voted yes. That will be added to the register too. Thank you. Point of order, Joan McAlpine.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I too had connectivity problems and I would have voted yes.
Thank you, Ms McAlpine. You'd have voted yes. That will be added to the register too. Thank you. Thank you, colleagues. The result of the vote on motion 24029 in the name of Mark Ruskell as amended is yes 71, no 53. There were no abstentions. The motion as amended is therefore agreed. Turn to our next question. The question is that amendment 24030.1 in the name of Hamza Youssef, which seeks to amend motion 2403 in the name of Patrick Harvey on unexplained wealth orders, Donald Trump, be agreed. Are we agreed? Yes. We're not agreed. We'll move to a vote. Members may cast their votes now. This is a 1-minute division on the amendment to the name of Hamza Youssef. Thank you. That vote is now closed. Please let me know if you were not able to vote and I will take a point of order. Can I call Angela Constance to make a point of order?
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Once again, I'm very sorry, but I was not enabled or allowed to vote, not given the opportunity to vote, so I would have voted yes.
Thank you, Ms Constance. You would have voted yes. I'll make sure that is noted and registered. And a point of order for John Swinney.
Presiding Officer, once again, I was unable to gain access to the voting app and I would have voted yes.
Thank you, Mr Swinney. I'll make sure that your vote yes will be added to the register. Thank you. Can I call David Torrance to make a point of order? David Torrance. I'm sorry, but we can't reach David Torrance, so I'm afraid I'm going to have to close the vote at that point. Thank you. The result of the vote on amendment number 24030.1 in the name of Humza Yousaf is yes 90, no 33. There was one abstention. The amendment is therefore agreed. The next question is that motion 24030 in the name of Patrick Harvie as amended on unexplained wealth orders Donald Trump be agreed. Are we all agreed? Yes. We're not agreed. We'll move to a vote and members may cast their votes now. This is a 1-minute division. That vote is now closed. Please let me know if you had any difficulty in voting. Daniel Johnson. Point of order, Daniel Johnson. We can see you, Mr. Johnson, but you need to switch your microphone on. Right, Mr. Johnson, can you try one more time? Okay. Mr. Johnson, can I ask you, if you voted yes or no or abstain, can you put your thumbs up, thumbs down, or abstain? Thumbs down. So, Mr. Johnson, I'm assuming you voted no. I will make sure that is added to the vote. Thank you. It's not the Roman Colosseum. We're okay.
Did you vote no?
Thank you. The result of that vote on motion 24030 in the name of Patrick Harvie as amended is yes 89, no 32. There was one abstention and the motion as amended is therefore agreed. The next question is that motion 24043 in the name of Graham Day on behalf of the Parliamentary Bureau on approval of an SSI be agreed, and these are the coronavirus restrictions at local levels which Michelle Ballantyne spoke against. Can I just confirm that Michelle, can I put the question, are we all agreed? And Ms Ballantyne can indicate a no in the blue jeans if she wishes to vote against. Sure. So we're going to move to a vote. Members may cast their votes now on motion 24043. A 1 minute division. That vote is now closed. Please let me know if you were not able to register your vote. Point of order, Edward Mountain.
I don't appear to have voted, or my app hasn't updated. In relation to that one, I would have voted yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mountain. I can assure you your vote was registered, Mr Mountain. Ian Campbell, Jeremy Balfour and I'm going to call Brian Whittle to make a point of order. Brian Whittle.
So, point of order, I would have voted yes. Presiding officer, my app didn't load.
Thank you, Mr Whittle. You would have voted yes. I'll make sure that is added to the register. Can I also confirm to Michelle Ballantyne, to Aileen Campbell and to Jeremy Balfour that all of their votes were registered? Thank you. The result of the vote on motion 24043 in the name of Graham Day is yes 120. There were no votes against. There was one abstention. The motion is therefore agreed. The next question is that motion 24053 in the name of Graham Day on behalf of the Bureau on approval of an SSI be agreed. And this is the provision of early learning and childcare specified children order, on which Beatrice Wishart spoke against and which Jamie Green was intending to speak. Are we all agreed? Yes. We're not agreed. We're going to move to a vote and members may cast their votes now. This will be a 1-minute division. This is on motion 24053. That vote is now closed. Please let me know if there were any difficulties in voting. Members, I'll give members a chance to do this in a minute. Thank you very much. The result of the vote on motion 24053 in the name of Graham Day is yes 117, no 7. There were no abstentions. The motion is therefore agreed. And the final question, I propose to ask a single question on the final 10 Parliamentary Bureau motions. Does any member object? No. The final question is that motions 24044 to 24052 and motion 24054 all in the name of Graham Day on behalf of the Bureau be agreed. Are we all agreed? Yes. We are agreed. Colleagues, before I close, I'm conscious that it is 6 o'clock. I know that many members wish to participate in the clap to show their commemoration for Captain Tom Moore, and certainly before we suspend meetings, allow members to do that now. Thank you very much, colleagues. And on that note, I close this meeting. Thank you.